us today for another webinar that's part of our series of webinars focused on digital marketing. Today, I have the pleasure of sharing the digital stage with Michelle Mecki from Mecki Media. Mecki Media and Michelle have been a partner of Voice Media for a while. We've been working together for a couple of years now. And it's exciting to finally share the stage because we've had a lot of discussions behind the scenes, but now we get to do it together in front of an audience. So first of all, Michelle, thank you for joining us today. And I would love for the audience to learn a bit more about you and what you do at Mecki Media.
Great. Well, thank you, first of all, so much for having me today. I'm super honored to be here. We absolutely love White Shark at Mecki Media. And like you said, you're such a special partner to us. And, you know, we've learned a lot from you as well as been able to teach you. So it's really such a joy to be here today to educate the rest of you out there about what you really need to be prepared for with PR and marketing. So Francisco, thank you for having me. And just to tell you quickly about myself, I have about 25 years experience, both in PR and media. I got my start as a television producer for Fox here in Chicago, where I was in charge of all the content on the morning shows and really, you know, sorting through what was going to be newsworthy and what we wanted to feature on those shows, and really got my start in journalism. So that's a big part of why I'm good at public relations, where I decided to make a switch after 12 years. And I've been in the agency world for about a decade before starting my own business, Mecki Media, just 6 years ago. So I like to say I've done every kind of PR out there, every type of business and vertical, and definitely can share my wisdom about what you need to know out there to really succeed in the coming year.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Michelle. And I can definitely tell that you have a lot of great things to say about this particular subject that we have today, which is basically how to prepare for the new year in terms of digital marketing. But in this particular year, we have a little bit of a shift in the conversation, which is how to prepare for a marketing year when you have the current situation that we're going through, which is a mix of a financial crisis, a post-pandemic world, and this new normal concept that we have been talking for a while. So that's a topic that we're going to be covering today, and we're going to navigate different digital marketing products and give you some tips on what we're seeing and what we're seeing from our clients and our partners on how to navigate this and prepare for what's coming up this year. We're going to be starting with a bit of brand awareness and the importance of brand awareness in times like these, and why it's so important not to lose the voice that you have out there in the storytelling process that you already started. Then we're going to talk a bit about PPC and SEO and the role they're playing in this particular situation, social media, and some interesting experiments that we're seeing from some other brands. And then Michelle's going to walk us through PR, the importance and the impact of storytelling in particular times like these, the strategies that you should be focusing on for your business, and also how to build your brand and what's important in a particular situation like this. So I'm going to get started talking a bit about awareness and awareness for brands. This is a topic that we've covered basically in every single webinar that we do, because for us, it's extremely important to highlight how relevant it is for you to control your brand and control how top of mind you are on your potential prospects and your actual customers as well. But in particular times like these, where there's a financial crisis and consumers are shifting the way they purchase products, it's even more important to be present. What we're seeing in the market is not necessarily a decrease in demand, which is something that you might be hearing from different sources. You know, there is this perception that economy is actually slowing down because of inflation, but in reality, most verticals have the same level or even more demand that they used to have before during the pandemic times. What we're seeing is a shift in how consumers actually go about buying a product and a service. And this is the key element for the presentation here, because what we believe is that we shouldn't really be talking about scaling up or scaling down marketing efforts, but rather changing the approach on how we get to that final customer. And brand awareness is probably one of the first things that you really need to think about, how present you are and how you're coming across with your brand, because consumers nowadays, they're particularly more picky about the brands they work with, because in times of crisis, they're more sensitive about the emotional connection they have with brands. And that's why it's so important to control that message. We're seeing that more people are actually joining the digital marketing ecosystem. We actually expect 2023 to be a big year for e-com, for retail, and for purchases through the web in general. So keeping your brand out there is extremely important. This isn't really the time to scale down on marketing efforts, because your consumers are jumping more and more into the digital marketing wagon. So that's an important message that we need to keep aligned, because most of the conversations that we're seeing with some of our partners and our clients is when they're preparing for 2023 and they are not really sure about how things are going to go in terms of the economy, the first topic of conversation that comes is, okay, we're thinking about scaling down our budget. And the first item in the list when they talk about their 2023 budget tends to be marketing and digital marketing. And Michelle, I'm pretty sure you're hearing this on your end as well. It's a conversation you're having with your clients.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems like the obvious choice, right? Because you think what's essential is everything else but the PR and marketing. But we're really educating our clients that their voice has to stay constant. During uncertain times like the pandemic, we had no idea how to prepare for that in advance, right? But the brands that have done well and the companies that survived that have been the ones that have stayed out there, have stayed present, and have invested in PR and digital marketing. And these days, it's really fully integrated to be most successful. So we're educating our clients and telling them not to cut back. And if they absolutely have to cut back, we're trying to be creative and making sure they can somehow stay consistent in the right way for them.
And I think that that's exactly the message that we try to
Yeah.
replicate here as well when we talk to customers, because we're not seeing the market slowing down, like we mentioned before. So if you're considering reducing your budget, chances are that your competitors are not going to reduce their budget. So you're actually just going to be less competitive. If we're seeing an increase in total spend year over year, the projections for 2023 say the same thing. So if you think that you are doing what the market is doing, in a lot of cases, you're not. You're just going to lose competitiveness. It is understandable that we need to be more careful with the budget. And that's kind of the topic that we're going to be covering here, because what we want to make sure is that if you're investing money into marketing, that you're getting the return that you should be getting. But marketing should be considered that an investment, not a spend. Any dollar that you put out there in order to generate more revenue shouldn't be the first thing that you're considering cutting down, whether it's paid advertising or your investment in organic efforts or PR for that matter. So that's a key element that we try to keep within the conversations we're having with our customers, because we are hearing it a lot. And this isn't our first rodeo. We had these conversations during COVID. We've had them before as well in previous financial crises, and we've seen the results of the customers that reduce their spend versus the ones that they don't. And companies tend to bounce back much faster when they don't reduce their spend, but rather stay constant and just really reshift the approach. And that's what we're seeing. Another thing that we're talking about with our customers is the importance of rethinking your budget and also focusing on your higher intent customers. And a good chunk of that comes from your existing customers. We had a pretty interesting experiment with a client that sells healthcare products. It's an e-com website. And what they decided to do just before Black Friday was to gift all their existing customers that have been recurrent customers for a year with a coupon for $50 free product. They sent that to their existing customers. And what that did was, I think it was a total investment of around $80,000. But what that did was it really re-engaged a lot of the existing customers. So they went into the website to get their free product, but because of the timing and because of the holidays, they also took the chance to make a purchase for gifts for their relatives, their loved ones. So this $80,000 experiment generated almost $400,000 in an increase year over year in sales, just by trying to engage with your existing customers. So when we talk about considering budget and being creative with the budget and making sure that you're really thinking on the return on investment that you're going to get from it, it's really going outside the box and thinking of these things. If your market seems to be cold or slowing down and you feel that your higher funnel opportunities aren't as active as they used to be, then focus on your existing customers. They're usually a gold mine, whether you can talk about cross sells, upsells, or just really re-engaging them and making them brand ambassadors. That's really the key element. If you're going to invest in that, you're likely going to see the results as well coming from that. But again, if we need to go ahead.
I'll just jump in real quick on that.
Yeah.
Existing customers for us too are so important to us. And I think, we're trying to really increase our touch points with them, have, big conversations so we can plan for next year, make sure that, if you have an agency out there that you're speaking with them, that you're asking them the right questions, and that you really feel the partnership, because those are the customers that are going to carry us through the hard times. I mean, you can take on the smaller ones as well, but I think making sure that they feel like they are being heard and that you're providing the service they need and really educating them on what to expect in the following year, I think is important.
Yes, and I think a lot of us in the past, we've missed the mark on the importance of our existing customers. I can tell you for us,
Yeah,
we've done a couple of experiments, and since we started to proactively really try to engage with existing customers and push for referrals, we've seen a significant increase in revenue coming from our existing portfolio. And this is a way to approach your marketing budget. If you're thinking of, this is my total marketing budget, and maybe I don't have the money to spend on X particular channel, but I do have a budget to gift my existing customers for their loyalty, that gift is likely going to get you a referral or a review that's going to turn into revenue. And it's really
totally
about
agree.
approaching the investment that way.
Yeah,
We've had a pretty strong referral strategy where we try to engage with our customers that have been with us for a while, and it's been extremely successful. It's the cheapest revenue source, I would
yeah,
say, is the cheapest cost per lead. These are
right.
the hottest leads that you get as well when they're referrals. So this is what we mean when we talk about rethinking your budget, but not necessarily cutting down, rather spending on what's going to get you most of the revenue. And PPC is a product we also talk about as well, because when you want to be efficient with your budget, the first thing that you need to have is a channel that you can measure. So you know if you're being efficient. And when we're talking about measuring efforts, PPC is probably king. You can track, basically every single cent that you're putting into advertising and understand if that is generating revenue or not. And this is a channel that we would recommend that if you need to restructure your budget, that you keep in mind, because this is something that you're always going to know if it's working or not. This is not a guessing game with PPC. Also, PPC allows you to fully focus on the lower levels of the funnel for your customers, those customers that you already know, either existing customers or have a high level of intent. And again, if the market seems to be slowing down for your particular vertical, then spend most of your marketing budget in the customers or potential customers that you know have shown already intent in the past. This is where remarketing comes into play. This is obviously an ongoing topic that we bring up all the time, but the reason we do is because we still see a lot of customers not really taking advantage of remarketing. One thing we see all the time when we talk to customers is, yeah, I have a remarketing campaign. So what are you doing for remarketing? I have their marketing audience added, in my campaign. So I know that they're being targeted. Okay, that's the first step, and that's great. That's the best practice. But are you doing anything different? If they are an existing customer or they've at least visited your website, what are they seeing that's different from someone that hasn't engaged with your brand? Do you have a different message? Are you showing them different images, different videos? Is there an offer that's trying to entice them to actually finish the process? And we see that a lot of customers don't go that far into marketing. And this is really what you should do when you're trying to focus on the lower levels of the funnel and these high intent audiences. If you have someone, if you're an e-com website and you have someone that's gone into your website, added things to the cart, and then dropped them and then left at that point in time, this is the moment where you go as aggressive as you can be with these particular customers. You go in and you offer a last minute discount. You follow them around on Instagram, you follow them around on YouTube, because you know that they were just one step away from purchasing your product and they might just need that one last incentive.
Yeah,
So PPC is the perfect element for that. And again, just like you were mentioning, Michelle, the importance of hearing those existing customers and existing visitors and understanding their pain points, it's really fundamental for this particular area of opportunity here in this particular channel. Then another important element here, and I think this is going to tie to your topic as well, Michelle, is the
yeah,
importance of YouTube and video. And video has been a product that's been around for a while. YouTube is now the second biggest search engine after Google. But what's important about this product here is when we talk about the change in how people, go through their purchasing journey, is now people are looking for more information and for more reliability when they go after a product or particular service. Now if you go into Amazon and you're going to purchase a product, you might get by, looking at the reviews and the 5 stars. But if you have the time to go into YouTube and look for an unboxing video and a review of the product, you'll do it. And you'll likely get more validation of that product there than anywhere else in the market, because now you have a much more personalized experience. Now you get to see the product. You get to see a familiar face opening the product. If you follow, the influencers in your industry, you get to see the tone of the brand. You get to see the voice. And that's why it's so important to have this video presence, because branding messages now have to be a lot more personalized, and you have to build much stronger emotional connection with your customers. That's really the shift in times of crisis. Your customers are still going to be customers, but now they expect you to connect at a different level with them. I have a particular brand that I buy. It's called True Classic. It's casual wear, it's active shirts and casual t-shirts. And the way I go hooked is I started seeing some Instagram ads, just normal images. I went in, and then after I became a visitor on the website, I started being retargeted on YouTube. and they have a very particular way of going about their YouTube ads. They do videos that are really focused on targeting, dads and the dad joke, dad world mentality. And the ads are very funny, but they're very relatable. When I see their ads and I see, how they go about wearing their shirts and how they make jokes about it and about the body types and all of that, it immediately connects. It actually gets me to connect with the brand, regardless of the product that I'm purchasing. I actually feel that this is my brand because it's directly connecting to me and my particular moment and my particular needs. So I've seen countless examples of this. If you want to talk about big brands and you want to talk about Nike and what they do on video,
Yeah.
they've evolved to a point where their ads are not about their products, it's about their values and what they stand for. If you watch the latest Nike ad, you're not really going to see them trying to sell you shoes or a t-shirt or shorts. They're selling you ideas. They're selling you values. They're selling you what they believe in. And that connects a lot more with your customers. And I know this ties perfectly with your PR, and how you position your brand, because to us, it's really about that. Even in the paid world, it's how do you make this emotional connection? And I'm pretty sure, Michelle, that on your end, that emotional connection is probably, if not the most important, one of the most important
Yeah.
elements
I mean,
of the project.
that's a huge part of our work. I have that point to make in my slides as well about really connecting to the emotion. And, video is so key right now to any of our campaigns as well. I mean, I'm always telling our clients and our businesses, even when we start, we're asking them, do you have any video? Have you taken time to, capture video of you on your job, and, maybe the people that work for you, or like you said, what's the emotional connection behind the business? Nothing tells it better than video. And, luckily we do have access now more than ever to ways to capture video, whether you want, depending on what your production level needs to be. But I have people reach out to me and say, can you just record something for me on your iPhone? Maybe a mini course on how to speak on camera. And I said, you don't need it to be professionally produced. No, not at all. Like, iPhone video sometimes can really capture the emotion and makes it so accessible to anyone who's trying to market themselves. So of course, when we're talking about advertising, that's a little different, but it doesn't take away from the importance of capturing video, and should be a part of any business's marketing strategy, no matter really what your budget is. I think these days you can get it done.
Yes, no, and again, the impact of the visuals and the connection, the human to human process, it's huge. Not only in the paid advertising world. I just came off a call right before this webinar. It was a call with a potential partner. They're located in India, in Asia, and it's late at night. It's almost 8 or 9 p.m. there, so it's definitely outside of working hours. And he took the call outside of his building on his phone with his iPhone. So he was sitting at a park at night, having the phone call. And it's the first time that I have a business conversation with someone that's not at an office and is actually at a park at night. And I made an immediate connection with this person because it felt very personal. This is someone that I hadn't seen before, but just seeing that video, just understanding that this was a real moment for them. This wasn't an executive conversation, but rather, let's just have a transparent conversation about a project. It had a huge impact for both of us. So the importance of the visual and the importance of the connection through video, it's key. And those are the type of topics that we really assess when we talk about marketing strategy for 2023. So, hey, if your budget is constrained by this, then let's focus on something that's going to build us that emotional connection, that's going to take us to that next level with the potential customers. And tying that to content and moving on to SEO, it's also extremely important that outside of video, all your content strategy is really geared towards adding value to your customers, because there's been changes in the algorithm on the Google end. We know what Google values now, and that's constantly changing. There's a lot of technical work in the background. But what's really important nowadays, and particularly during times of crisis, is that you are an authority that people can trust. If you're going to sell a product or a service, that you're providing added value that makes you an authority, a trustworthy website or a trustworthy source of information. And that's really what it's all about, to get the bigger picture when you're trying to capture customers. You're going to get always that end user that's going to buy your product because they saw the ad and then they like the product. But if you want to build mass following, you really have to think outside the box and think, how do I make my voice and my brand trusted? And SEO is the perfect tool for that, because SEO really is nowadays all about content. 5 or 10 years ago was a lot about the technical work, optimizing the meta tags and optimizing the backend of the website and the user experience. That's still extremely important. But nowadays, one key element that Google values a lot is content and how relevant content is. For us, for instance, here at White Shark during COVID, one strategy that we jumped in was, hey, COVID is tough. The situation is tough. We have a lot of partners that are going through financial issues. Their customers are canceling or pausing their campaigns. What can we do to add value? And we thought about it in terms of adding value and not necessarily in terms of adding more revenue immediately. What we did is we invested significantly in generating content that could be used by different industries on how to navigate COVID. So we wrote a lot of articles for lawyers on how to navigate COVID, for dentists on how to navigate COVID, ideas that they could consider if they wanted to, do telehealth and, take patients through video, or how to take cases remotely, etc. And it was such a huge success for us. The amount of organic traffic and even inbound leads that we started getting was significantly higher than any other efforts that we had tried in the past. And we understood the importance of being genuine about the content and having this genuine, drive to help your customers and add value, and how that actually eventually turned into revenue, right? So if you're thinking again about what you need to do differently now in 2023, taking into account we're going through this financial crisis or so-called financial crisis, is that you need to connect at a deeper level with your customers, and you need to add value. If you're going to write an article, don't write a sales article. Write an article that adds value to your customers, that they can use as a reference when they need information. A lot of how-tos, a lot of, webinars like this, when you're telling people, you're trying to help people navigate based on your existing experience. This is what's going to get and drive more organic traffic that's qualified. And it's also going to help you spread the word faster in regards to your brand and how Google sees your website as well. One interesting trend that we've seen as well that's been changing in the past couple of years, but we've seen a lot of acceleration this past year, is how people are looking for information as well. And it's the importance and the rise of voice search and optimizing your website for voice. So now we're not only talking about having video and being trustworthy and making sure that you have your brand, but that you're investing resources in making your entire approach voice friendly. About 40-50% of searches now are happening through voice, and they will likely continue to increase as we move into 2023, whether it's an assistant, or whether it's, you have your PlayStation and you have a microphone there and they have a search engine, or you're using, a smart home speaker or anything of the sort. Voice is becoming the next thing. We've been seeing this for a while, but we saw significant acceleration in 2022 and 2021. With COVID, a lot of people spent time at home. They invested a lot of money into making home better. They bought a lot of smart speakers. There's a lot of promotions on that. Companies took that opportunity to make the house smarter. Now this means that you have a search engine everywhere you go. Even if you don't have your phone at hand, you have a search engine in every room of the house. And if you don't capitalize on this particular opportunity, you're not present there, you're going to miss out on potential customers, because now you have people brushing their teeth and asking their smart home speaker in the bathroom, where can I buy, an extra XYZ? And if you haven't optimized your terms for that, if you haven't optimized your website for that, then you're going to miss out. So these are the things that we refer to when we talk about shifting the mindset, and not necessarily cutting down the approach, but reshaping your approach to make sure that you match what your customers need. These are the type of things that we would recommend that you do and that you focus on to make sure that you're capturing the right audience. And then the final topic that I'm going to cover on my end is social media. And this is something that I actually liked a lot, that I saw develop in the past 2 years, which is how big brands are approaching social media and how they're going definitely outside the box to find a voice that will suit them and that will connect them better with their potential customers. And when we talk about emotional connections and when we talk about social presence, this is what we talk about. A lot of the trends that we saw on social media with big brands going into partnerships with other big brands and putting two audiences together. When you have an audience that relates to your brand, but also relates to another brand that you could partner with, you have a great opportunity to do a joint effort and basically expand your network from the get-go. My favorite example was obviously McDonald's and Burger King, which is something that nobody would have expected a couple of years ago, but they actually joined efforts and they had a lot of social campaigns together where they would encourage customers to buy products from each other, and then the proceeds will go into charity. There was an ad, I think, in Poland where if you would go into a Burger King with McDonald's fries, you would get a free burger. And then the proceeds from, they would donate some of that revenue they would get to a particular foundation, etc. So the opportunity that we see in the social space is really trying to find the right voice for your customer, but also try to connect to the customer outside of the typical paid ad. So if you're talking about advertising, you're talking about the presence in general, try to understand what your customers are doing outside of your product and outside of your buying journey. If they buy your product and your service, what else are they doing outside of that?
Yeah.
And how can you connect outside of that so you're relevant as well? Again, this is your bread and butter, Michelle. So I know you're going to give
Yeah.
us some good train of thought on this, but I'm guessing that this is also coming up in the conversations with your customers.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, our agency works in so many different verticals, so we love to actually partner our clients together and co-brand, if that makes sense, when it comes to maybe, you know, pitching a topic or doing a campaign, because it just elevates them, right? I mean, you're capitalizing on two different audiences and actually capturing the customer in an interesting way. But we see this all the time in PR with celebrities. I mean, how many celebrities do you see, you know, sponsoring different companies and different organizations, adding you know, depth to what they're doing, catching attention. So it could be through sponsorships, it could be through partnerships. We see it all the time, and we love promoting campaigns like that because it really elevates them to the next level, and it actually resonates sometimes much more than just pitching a brand on its own.
Yes, and I think also in terms of what it does for the social connection and
Yeah,
the perceived social connection that people have with your brand, that's the key element. And I think that that's really what ties this social media world right now together with potential customers, which is your social presence. And social media is the one channel that allows you to listen more closely to your potential customers and connect maybe even at a more personal level, because you get to reply to comments and you get to have a direct interaction. But this is really the key element here, to understand the network as a social connection tool, because the buying journey now is closely tied to your social relationship and emotional relationship with your potential customers, which wasn't the norm 4 or 5 years ago. Again, customers, you know, they would buy a brand because that's the brand that they knew, or they felt that the product was good. Now they need to relate to the brand. Now there needs to be something behind it, especially since we're going through a transformation in terms of generational changes. We're going, you know, millennials have been the power buyers, you know, they've been the ones that
yeah,
have the buying power for a while, but now Gen
yeah,
Z is catching up. You know, it's every
right,
year Gen Z is becoming more powerful, and Gen Z is very emotional, and they like to be emotionally connected to brands. And the social space is the one space where you can actually take advantage of that. You can control your message, you can control the perception of your brand, but you also get to listen to your customers, which to me is maybe the most important element of the entire strategy. If you're going to jump in and spend money on marketing, make sure that you're doing it after listening to your customers and understanding the pain points and understanding what resonates with them. You know, it's not
right.
about putting your product out there based on what you believe works, because you know that
Yeah,
works for you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that resonates with the customer. And if you're not having those conversations in your social channels, if you're not trying to engage in the comment section of, you know, your Facebook posts or even your YouTube videos, you're going to miss out on a significant element that you need to optimize your marketing campaign. So for us, when we talk about social and investing money there, it's about the conversation. Invest into having conversations with your customers so you can get the added value yourself to invest in a better way and more efficient way in your digital marketing channel. So that
and I'll
covers,
just
I
add,
think. Go ahead.
I'll just add really quickly, and I'll get into my section where this really makes the biggest impact. Just be authentic, you know, be your
Yeah.
real self on social media. Really pay attention to creating a strategy around how you're going to communicate in a real way. You know, I think that's what's so powerful about social media. It's not about looking perfect and pretending, you know, that you do anything and everything. It's really being authentic about what you do and who you are, and telling those powerful stories. And we have such an unbelievable tool at our disposal to really amplify anything that we do through social media. You can reach your customers directly. They can reach you. You know, I can go on LinkedIn and I can write to heads of companies that I want to maybe speak to, you know, and they probably will get back to me. So it's pretty unbelievable these days what power we have on social. So integrating that in any strategy is so key. And so many people ask me, how do you do it? How do you do it? I see you everywhere on social media. You know, it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of strategy, but it also is incredibly effective.
Yes, and I think, you know, one key element that stood out for me this particular year was the shift in how community managers use their voice.
Yeah.
Twitter is the perfect example. And if you see all these tweets that went viral, what you're seeing is now a human, using company accounts and actually having conversations. A lot of companies actually now they're having their community managers sign the tweet, so you know which human is actually managing the account and who you're talking to. So you don't feel that you're talking to company X, but rather you're talking to Joe from company X. And the voice that you see in the tweets is completely different. Again, 4 or 5 years ago, very executive, very formal, very business mindset. Nowadays it's just a regular Joe, and it's very casual, very witty, very funny, a lot of memes, but that connects with people and it gets you to connect with the brand. It humanizes the brand, which again, social is really for me the channel that does that, and the one that you have to leverage for that. So, but now jumping into PR and brand, I'm gonna let you take the lead. So you walk us through a bit some of the things that you're seeing on your end as well, not only based on your experience, but also since you've gone through so many different changes in this particular digital marketing world, I know that this isn't, again, your first rodeo, your first crisis. You have a good idea of how to come out of these. But since this one's particularly different, I also know that you're seeing a lot of new things. So please walk us through and share some of the things that you're seeing on your end.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to walk you through just some key things to remember, key things that we're seeing as well. And also I'm going to use our company as a little bit of a case study, share with you how we navigated the pandemic. And I think there's a lot of teaching there for businesses out there who even are, whether you're just starting out or whether you're continuing to grow and you're trying to experiment with what to do in the coming year. PR and brand differentiation is really all about storytelling. So just like you were saying, Francisco, at the beginning of the presentation about the power of telling a good story when it comes to your digital marketing, the way you develop that story is really through a PR campaign, and differentiating your brand is the secret to success, truly, in any marketing plan. And that really happens with a very solid PR strategy. So going on to the next slide here, the value of a strong brand story. Oh, sorry, you're ahead of me. Strong brand story there. I was saying the importance of a brand story, is really the heart of it. And as you can see some of the stats here, I just wanted to point out a few of those. 90% of people feel that brands are not telling good stories in general, and they want those in order to connect. Just like you said, it's the emotion behind the business these days. That's what we're seeing more than ever. It's not just about what your services are, but who you are. Who are the leaders of your company? What do you believe in? Are you purpose driven? All of this is so important as we head into 2023, and know that being prepared is so important. Here's a few stats just about who's prepared in a crisis. Over 300 board members shared views from around the globe, and only 49% of companies really had a playbook for crisis scenarios. We didn't really see the pandemic coming and know the effect it was going to have on our business. But going into next year, there's a lot of data around what to expect and what we're looking for. So I think we do have a chance now to really make sure that you have that brand story ready. Make sure that you build PR into your marketing plan, because not being prepared is where we see the issues. So going on to the next slide here. Now I'm ready for you, Francisco. So I'm going to take you through a few key points about PR. A lot of people ask me, what really is PR? What is PR all about? People are confused sometimes about what that is and how it fits into the marketing wheel. So basically, it's your way to maintain your public image, whether you're an organization, whether you want to raise your individual profile and just improve your reputation. An article in a newspaper brings that credibility to you, or an article in any type of publication. It allows you to be more reputable and credible. So content can be very authentic and informative. You mentioned SEO. Well, SEO, by writing articles, like you said, can be very organic. It's the same thing with PR. By getting you covered and adding some SEO behind it, the power is incredible of who will see that. And we can build your own thought leadership that way and get so much exposure for your business. We want to attract your target market through PR. We want to build your brand image through PR. And we really get third-party endorsements, getting you quoted when a third party speaks about your brand is a way to really beef up your PR. And then who knows, attract investors. You may be a business out there that's thinking about selling one day. So you have to maintain your brand image and your brand reputation through a powerful PR strategy. Now, in turbulent times, right, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I need to cut my PR. Why should I be promoting myself when we're in an unstable situation? But that's really, we recommend the opposite, because you can't stop and start a PR strategy. You really need to be consistent to work its best. It's not something you can turn on and turn off. You have to be consistent in telling that story. It's time to be loud rather than quiet. I bet you would agree, Francisco, in all of that.
Yes, no, I mean, because consistency is key. And that's also something
Yeah.
that we tell every single customer that we bring on board, because our generation is impatient, and
Yeah,
we tend to want things to work out pretty fast,
right.
and we miss sometimes the bigger picture, and we miss, the understanding that during crisis, it's a lot of testing through the navigation of these waters. So, if you
Exactly.
want to build authority, it takes time. If, an article in Forbes is not going to make you viral on day one, that's just going to contribute to one more part of the strategy that's going to get you to build this authority. And that's not just the social aspect. Technically, it also works like that. Like, if you want to build a reputation on Google, it's not just, with a couple of articles here or a couple of things there. It takes time. It takes, constant traffic, constant validation, building trust.
Yep.
So it's definitely a recurring theme as well. And it's also
Yeah.
part of the expectation setting process as well, with our customers, for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm getting a lot of clients that are like, "Oh my gosh, we need PR starting January 1st. Like, we just, can you get us a proposal like this week?" And we're trying to jump to get it to everyone we can.
Yeah.
But I always say, like, you have to give us at least like 4 weeks or 6 weeks to really ramp up that strategy. We can't just be hired and boom, send a press release out, right? So that's why we're telling you, and I'm recommending to really think ahead, and develop your internal branding before a crisis, right? We don't know what's going to happen next year. So make sure that you're ready. Make sure that you're present on all the platforms. Make sure that you have your story really hone in on, and don't wait until a crisis happens to realize, oh my gosh, I need to fix my website now. I need to, start communicating about what I do best. I mean, this all has to be done now. So going into next year, you're really ready, no matter what's going to happen. So the next slide I'll talk about is really about, how to build that brand story, because that's what we're saying, how to tell your story. And I'm sure it's hard for people who are just starting out. I remember when I started my business 6 years ago, I was kind of like frozen and like, what am I going to say about myself? And I wrote it and rewrote it a million times. And a mentor I was working with was like, Michelle, just hit click on LinkedIn and put yourself out there. You can't be frozen in how to write it perfectly. This is about, really being deep and thinking, what's really your path and your founding story, right? What are you offering that others aren't? Who are you as a brand, and who's your target audience? Whether you have a consumer audience or a B2B audience, it could be different, but really hone in on what is your story and what makes you different from your competition. See what's going on with your competition too. I have businesses coming to me and they say, everybody else claims that they're first in doing this, and we were the first, and they're everywhere in the media, and how come we're not? And I said, well, because you need to invest in the marketing, right? You need to not just hire us, but you need to actually like take the time to put money behind your own marketing strategy. And so that's really what it boils down to. And I say key messaging, which is really not that complicated. It's about 3 to 5 key talking points that really set you apart. And that's my homework for all of you listening, is really think about that, journal about that, think about what makes you different. And that's part of building your brand story. Then we go to the next slide, which is really developing the strategy. So how do you do that? You think about, okay, what am I going to tell and when in 2023? What do I have coming up? Do I have an anniversary? Do I have upcoming announcements, hiring announcements? Where can I, as the CEO, offer advice? What webinars for White Shark can I do? Where can I be out there and be more present? And that's how you put that timeline together and start to build that strategy for next year when it comes to PR. Couple more tips I'd love to give on how to get media coverage, which is our next slide. Everybody's wondering, how do I get out there?
Just before you jump into that, because storytelling is a pretty interesting topic for us here as well. And talking about storytelling, I have a story. We had we had training a couple of years ago from Dale Carnegie. We did some sales training and communication training with them. And one of the main exercises that we did it 5 times, was tell a story about your childhood. And at that point in time, nobody really got it. Like, we didn't really understand what the point of the exercise was. But, we did it 5 times and every time we were doing it, we were refining the story, but not also refining the story, but refining how we were telling it. And then we came to the conclusion of, that is what we do. We tell stories. And now when we hire someone to work in digital marketing, so when we hire someone to manage a campaign, part of the assessment process is tell us a story about your childhood. And then we evaluate the communication there, of course, but we evaluate how they think about presenting ideas. And it really is about storytelling. And that's kind of the message that we try to put across. We're no longer trying to present scripts. We're trying to present a story, because stories sound real and they help you connect with real people. So it's an exercise that we strongly believe now internally as well.
Yeah.
Because
I love that.
that's kind of our job. It's we
Yeah.
tell stories. I don't do ads for you. I tell the story about your brand, and hopefully
Yeah.
that connects with your customers. Yeah.
We do that also when we're doing media training and public speaking training. And I even did it with my team on a retreat where I said, I want everybody to stand up and tell a story, any story that resonates with you, and it was really amazing. I learned so much about the people that work for me, and we all sort of left crying, and we were in tears actually with some of the stories that were being told, because they can be so powerful and really take your brand to the next level. So love that you guys did that too.
Yeah.
So speaking of stories, media, right? How do you get media coverage? It's the mystery that so many people are always wondering, and I wanted to lay out some ideas here for you on how that really works. There's all different types of press out there these days. Going into 2023, we're seeing people pitching podcasts, people pitching YouTubers, people pitching all different types of media right now. And ways that you can get your organic story out. I gave you some tips here on how to do it. We don't need to write pages and pages. The press is very busy these days. They just want to see, a couple key points about what your story is, what you're trying to get across. And the key is really to find the right media that you want to reach. So not everyone is going to be interested in your story. Sometimes it's a very specific blogger that you should be reaching out to tell maybe a story about your leadership, or for a makeup artist, it could be a beauty blog or a beauty online beauty writer. So you really need to think about being concise to the point and telling your story to the right people.
Yeah, here at White Shark, we joke internally in regards to again following this train of thought in regards to story is every time we go through a crisis, whether it's an external or an internal one. When we go through the crisis, we always sit down in these leadership meetings and we always say, man, this is going to be a good story when we tell it. Whenever we have our Netflix series done, this is going to be such a good episode, because it makes it so much more exciting. And it really is about that, and if you want to, to me in my case, at least, if you want to be relevant out there, you have to be precise and concise, but also have the value in there. If you can tell your story in a couple of tweets and make it valuable, then it's probably very, worthy out there. And then I think you're going to get picked up as well, much more.
Totally. And we have a retail client, for example, that has been around for over 80 years. They're an incredible business. And, there's so many stories within the business. It's not just about the products they sell, but the people that work there. And so they do a great job of featuring, longest standing employee, or employees that got married on the job, or employees that have done amazing things. And so sometimes it's the stories within your business that you're not even thinking about, that are not quite the sales angle that you would have originally thought. So that's where we try to really encourage our clients to be creative and think about all those stories that you have under your roof that you may not even be thinking about, that will resonate with your customers.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. So, okay, we can go to the next few slides here, going into thought leadership, which you mentioned a little bit with your SEO strategy, right? So every CEO, every leader is a thought leader, right, in what we do, and is another opportunity to get coverage and get PR. I know you guys do such an amazing job with your webinar series. You're featuring thought leaders. You're sharing industry knowledge. This is such a great tool for us to get exposure for our companies going into next year. It's also very authentic, not a sales message. I love to give back. I love to give advice with all my years experience at this point, and all the things that I've went through in my life. So, and there's so many thought leaders out there like that. So really take the time to put yourself out there. Don't be shy. Don't hide behind the camera. Learn how to get out there and speak, and speak on behalf of your business and speak on behalf of your industry. Whether it's giving quotes, whether it's writing case studies that you feature on your website, and personal branding is probably the biggest growing aspect of what we do now, where we're not just taking thought leaders and giving them quotes and pitching them. We actually need to build who they are as human beings. I do this very heavily on my social media. You know who I am. You know that my kids are everything to me. You know that I'm a cancer survivor, right? You know that I'm an entrepreneur, and you get interested in what I have to say because of the human aspect of what I do. And that's really the tool and the technique that I think is so important going into 2023 right now.
Yeah, and I think often we forget as well that when we talk about thought leadership and reaching out to other people in the industry, is that most of them relate to us one way or another, whether it's on the business side or the personal component. Yeah, we're all human, and we always have something in common, whether it's we both ride bikes and we like mountain biking, or we both have kids, or we went through the similar struggle. We sometimes forget that there's always a human connection regardless of the level of expertise. So, and we've had opportunities to reach out to people that back in the day we felt that maybe were not that reachable because of their expertise and their level, but then we just reached through a normal connection and a human connection, and hey, we both like this and we're both going to be at the same place, would you like to meet up and do something together? And it's worked. And it's really about that as well, because I think sometimes when we are planning to do a webinar series, or we want to jump in and do a podcast, we have this fear that we're not going to be able to reach the right audience because we're not going to be able to get, a high level person to join the podcast or the web. But that's not true. Most people are willing to speak, and most people like to tell stories as well. Yeah. And it's easy to make that human connection. So if you want to connect with thought leaders, give it a go. It's doable. It's a lot of people seem to be scared about it, but it's a good strategy, but it's also it's a humanizing strategy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so moving on here, integrated content is key. This is why we love you, White Shark. We can't just do PR alone. It really doesn't stand as powerful as it can be without that integrated content. So make sure, as we've been saying, you have social media, your brand story, your spokespeople, your strategy, your content, all truly integrated, and they're dovetailed together. So we may write a great brand story, but it has to be living on your website. It has to be living on your social media. It has to be living in your digital marketing, right? It all needs to flow together. It can't really be separate anymore. So think about ways that you can leverage testimonials, influencers, the people that are really doing this right and it's fully integrated are the ones that are reaping the biggest benefit. So going into next year, again, in uncertain times, really look at everything that you're doing and make sure that it's working together. So that's also a big growing area of public relations, where we can't really separate it anymore. We have to be able to advise on all angles. And then just a couple more points. Go ahead, Francisco.
Yeah, no. And in terms of this particular strategy about, the validation and integrating the content and the testimonials, this isn't just something that we recommend because we think it's good. It's also a technical factor in your campaigns. Google does put you higher up if you have more testimonials and better reviews. And the same thing happens with Amazon and any other network where you are able to have some social validation or proof. Technically, it's also going to help you rank better. So it's not just about you looking better or feeling better about your customers. The platforms will help you out, in the back end, if you have this validation, because the platforms understand that this builds trust, and they understand that this, again, humanizes the experience.
Exactly.
And it's also a validation to them that you're a legit brand and that you actually have the presence that you should have. So it's a thing that we also like to emphasize a lot, reputation management, testimonials, reviews, and keeping that human voice coming in and validating your product, because again, that humanizes you to your customers. And that's what this generation is looking for as well.
100%. Yeah. So also just moving on here to crisis. So, we're talking about how to prepare for uncertain times, right? But I just wanted to throw in a couple of tips on how do you carry through that crisis. Really, you've built your brand, you have the credibility, but now you really have to prepare for when that happens. The more you prepare, the more equipped and successful you'll be when that crisis hits. So have a plan. Who's going to speak on your behalf? How are you going to handle it if things go wrong? Make sure that you have those people trained, they have their key messages ready to go, and that you know exactly how you're going to talk to your customers, right? And then newsjacking is a term I love to teach people. I mean, that's really where you need to follow the news if you're going to be successful in PR. You need to see what's happening in your industry, set those Google alerts to your competitors and follow what's happening in the news. Because if there's a big story about your industry that you can offer expert advice on, you're going to want to reach out and you're going to want to be that voice in those moments. And that's really how we maximize media coverage for our clients. It's not just about telling their stories, it's about getting into what the media is already writing about and being there for them when they need those stories. So that's how you really build those relationships with the press. And when they need that expert, they reach out to you because you've been the one that's been there for them when they need it in times of stress.
I have one question here about
Okay.
newsjacking, because this is a particularly interesting subject for me. Is I've seen, I see a lot of companies do this, but I've also seen a lot of companies mess it up. I've seen a lot of
Right.
companies
Good point.
jump into a trend of,
Right.
a trendy new, but their opinion isn't really, it doesn't connect. I've seen them mess up. How do you go about, how do you know when to jump in? How do you know if it's a good fit for you? How do you go about, or what do you recommend your customers do when,
Yeah.
how to be sensitive? Because a lot of these news as well that I've seen it, where both people mess up is sensitive news, where there are sensitive issues or sensitive topics. We still see companies jump in. Some of them, we see them advertise on these things, and sometimes it backfires, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
What advice do you give your customers on this?
That's a great point, actually. And I'm glad you brought that up because I don't want you to jump in and start, being part of the conversation if
Having
you
an
are
opinion
really,
on everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you are really authentic about what you want to say. We do have to be careful that you're not just capitalizing on a tragedy just to get your word out there, right? Or you decide to, donate or offer free services to victims of something horrible that happened in the news. That's not really advisable for most cases, depending on the scenario. You have to be very careful. I would say, really reach down into your core values and who you are as a business to make sure it makes sense that you're going to go out there. And I'm not really necessarily talking about, starting to post on social media, but it's more from an advice perspective. If you have actual real advice to offer to the public during a time of crisis, during the pandemic, for example, I was speaking a lot about leadership and how to take care of my team during times of crisis when they were freaking out and afraid to leave the house at one point. We were locked in our homes. People were very nervous. How do you push them to work when they're concerned about their overall health and well-being, right? So tips like that. Now tips about a hybrid workforce for leaders out there and how are you navigating that. So that's what I mean about really following what's happening in the news and just what you guys are doing with this webinar, looking ahead to the predicted recession and what does that exactly mean us as businesses and what do we need to know. So I think you need to be careful and don't overdo it, but really do what makes sense and when you really can add value to the issues at hand. I
Yes,
hope that helps explain it.
being
Okay.
transparent and being real. I think that
Yeah,
that's
being
that's the key
transparent.
element there. Yeah.
Yeah, so the last thing I just want to talk about really quickly, and I sort of already mentioned it, is just what, because I think that this is really what I like to advise to other leaders and other businesses out there is, sometimes we're in an uncertain situation and the clients are asking for things that aren't exactly in your contract or aren't exactly within scope. This is when you show that true partnership, like you said, Francisco, offering a discount, to longstanding clients or as a gift, right? But really being able to pivot and say, you know what, I am going to help you with your crisis because I am your agency. And even though, we didn't hire you or you didn't hire us for a crisis, we know how to do that, right? And so we were doing that a lot during the pandemic and helping with email communication and how to talk to customers if there was a COVID breakout and just being a reliable source for them on anything they needed when it came to communication, right? And then as a leader itself, we need to take care of the people that work for us, right? When there's a crisis, we don't want panic. We don't want our culture affected. And so think about ways that you can be out there and continue telling your story and supporting your team. And, we created wellness events and I was out there still doing thought leadership and speaking, even though there were very, very uncertain times. But that's really the advice I think I want to end with is don't panic, don't retreat. It's time to really be out there and be present and find ways to continue to tell your story, because that's how you navigate uncertain times. So that's all I want to say on that, Francisco.
Thank you. No, and just to continue that thought is, I think we can't forget that we're all now experts in crisis management. This is not the first or the second crisis that we go through. So it's important to remember that, because sometimes, I mean, we all get nervous. I got pretty nervous during COVID personally, and also the business side,
We all did.
because it was different, you know, it's hard to navigate. But then after COVID and now, you know, we still have a certain level of nervousness because there's certain uncertainty there, right? But we've gone through similar situations before, and we kind of know how the drill goes, right? Or we've done similar things that we know are going to work, and it's worked out well for most of us usually at the end. So it's important to remember that as well, because there's the emotional toll and the emotional health factor here as well. Which is, you know, we are trying to keep a steady ship, and we're trying to focus on the business side of things, but the emotional side is also important. If you as a leader aren't emotionally stable and you're not understanding the bigger picture and keeping calm, it's going to be hard to head the business that direction. So I think that's a great topic to end the conversation on. We're almost out of time, but I do have a couple of questions before we wrap it up. Let me see. Let me choose. I think we can get 3 questions tackled. How can you measure the results of PR?
That's a great question. The ultimate question.
Yes.
Someone
That's a great question.
Asking me the hardest question. Thanks a lot, guys. You know, in many different ways these days. I will say there are some awesome tools out there now, which is very important for us as agencies to really look into, invest in, and make sure that we're providing that for our clients. So, you know, we have tools that provide excellent reporting. You can see impression numbers, you can see impact, you can see social media analytics. You know, we can see where and how far we've taken that story and that brand. Now, whether or not that resonates in sales for you is the ultimate misconception about PR, right? What I said earlier, PR can't be the only answer for you. We are the way to tell that authentic story and support all of the other digital marketing efforts to really carry them to success. So we're the spoke on the wheel of marketing, right? But a very important one. So as far as results go, sure, we want to hear from you. Did your web analytics go up when that story appeared online or on television? Did you get any calls? Did you get any sales? And very often we do hear that from our clients, but you have to make sure you have that open conversation with your agencies and really understand the expectations that PR is meant to provide you with. We are part of the growth tool that you have, but we have to measure it really in a very full circle way.
And I think also another key element to answer part of this question is have an open conversation with your customers as well. And I'll tell you, 100%. In our experience, you know, we have our digital channels tracked, right? So sometimes we get a lead that comes in that says that comes from a paid campaign. But when we talk to the customer, they say, no, I actually heard about you guys in this particular webinar or this publication, or I heard about you from here. So if you want to get a true sense of what's driving, ask your customers, because usually you'll get more information there than any system that you have tracking. Digital can be tracked pretty efficiently. And I know there's a lot of tools out there. Like you mentioned, there's tools to see when you're mentioned, you know, how far that goes. But the best way is to talk to your customers, ask them where they found out about you. And if they become customers, also ask them why they became customers. And then they'll tell you how efficient you are. So
one other quick thing I'll add about that really fast too, is that we're adding more deliverables into our campaigns to help fill the gap that maybe is seemingly, you know, a lack of results, where we're actually writing more content. We're providing customers with content to then take and put on their website, to put in their digital marketing campaigns. And so make sure that you're working with an agency, or that you have, you know, content going that is useful to you in more ways than just a pitch to the media, right? It has to live in many different areas of your business.
Yes. Let me see if I can pick one more question. We have 1 minute left.
This went fast.
Yes, it did. I know I was expecting this to be a bit shorter, but it did. Yeah. Are there any industries that benefit more than others by leveraging digital marketing and PR? I can take the digital marketing paid advertising side and tell you that digital marketing is just a tool. So most industries are able to advertise online, so most industries can benefit from the networks. But it's going to depend on where your audience is and who you're trying to connect. If you are within some of the bigger, industries, healthcare, auto, legal, e-com, you're going to get the results. These are industries that work. If your product is very niche, you're going to get results. You just have to understand the type of results that you're going to get. For some industries, digital marketing is better for brand awareness than for generating sales. There's always a result that you're going to be able to get if the strategy is efficient, but you do have some that are going to get maybe more sales or more revenue, which are the traditional ones. And if you're more niche, I think it's going to have to be more of a complement of other products and strategies to get out there. And I'm guessing, PR is similar. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very similar. It's different kind of results depending on the type of industry, and we have to make sure that we're targeting the right publications, the right audiences, to be most successful, whether it's, a niche industry versus, a mainstream brand. It's just each can benefit in different ways.
Yeah. I think it's always going to be a case by case, but we can't forget that this is one more tool that becomes part of a bigger strategy as well, because this is just a complementary channel that you have to be able to push forward your efforts. But I think now we're actually right on time. We're 1 minute later schedule, but thank you very much, Michelle, for joining us today. Thank you for the great content. This was a very fun conversation. It went by pretty fast, so it was definitely fun. But thank you for joining us, and for everyone watching, thank you for joining us as well. If you want more information about digital marketing or PR, please feel free to reach out to Michelle or myself. I'm a talker, so I like to talk on the phone. If you want to have a casual conversation, I'll be available. But more importantly, we're going to be sending the recording and the deck on a follow-up email. So if you want to have it at hand, you'll receive it probably in the next couple of days. And feel free to join us on our next webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And again, thank you, Michelle, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.